I'm Adam Calaway at Cattle Chat Corner at the Noble Foundation Grow Safe booth at NCBA 2014 in Nashville, Tennessee. I have the pleasure of having Forrest Roberts, our CEO of NCBA, here. Tell me a little bit about NCBA for those of that may not know what NCBA is and what they do.
Well, NCBA is the largest national cattlemen organization representing beef producers from across this country. And we have a real unique opportunity once a year to come together here. This year is in Nashville at our annual Cattle Industry Convention and NCBA Trade Show. I think we're going to have, Adam, close to 10,000 cattle producers from all across the country here this week. No doubt we'll set a record for attendance, an all-time record. And it seems to me that everyone I've talked to thus far, they're buzzing. They have this sense of optimism about the future of the beef industry, the decisions we need to make about the future, and I think that's why they're here to engage and help us make those decisions.
Well, let's talk a little bit about those decisions. What decisions get made here at NCBA? How do they impact the industry?
Well, NCBA is, we do three things. We connect the beef supply chain as, number one, a contractor to the beef checkoff program. That's all about how we do our work as a demand creator for beef globally. Secondly, we try to do everything we can to gain access also to these key international markets all around the globe for beef exports. And then last but not least, we work on policy positions that result in a beef producer anywhere in this country having that freedom to operate responsibly. So when you take those three areas of focus and how we're trying to connect the entire beef supply chain, those are the types of discussions, those are the types of decisions that help us really chart the course for the future of the beef industry. So that's what the focus is all about here this week. It's about education, it's about engagement, and also it's an opportunity to have a little entertainment and some fun while they're here.
Sorry, we do have fun at NCBA. Let's talk about some of the global issues that are facing agriculture as an industry. What are the top two or three that you're really focused in on?
Well, there's no doubt that agriculture as a whole and the beef community within agriculture, we're at a crossroads. And we don't look at that crossroads, Adam, as much as a challenge, but really more as an opportunity. And when you look at this crossroads, the first area we tend to point toward is the pressure that's on our industry today and the opportunity to tell our story for the beef production technologies that we use, why we use them, and how they're part of the world's most efficient production system. Secondly, when we look at agendas that might be driven by an activist organization, there's a lot of focus around how we get in front of those agendas and point them in the right direction. Third is when we look at government policy, not just what's made in terms of government policy in Washington, D.C. on Capitol Hill, but also in state governments as well. And how do we look at policies that will, as I referenced earlier, give that producer the freedom they need to operate their business responsibly. And then last but not least is really the big one, and that is you take all three of those and buckle it into consumer preference for beef, not just here domestically, but globally. And we see a shift in consumer preference for beef, especially given the high prices that we see at the retail counter and at a food service operation, that we really need to make sure we're understanding what is truly driving consumer preference for beef globally. So those are the four areas that we tend to see the most focus here in Nashville and throughout the year.
Let's talk a little bit about the consumers for a second. The idea about consumer preference. Will you go into that a little bit more as to what we're seeing with consumer preference?
Well, when you look at drivers of beef demand, it starts with price, followed by safety, followed by nutrition, and then the fourth driver, or what some people might say, Adam, is a limiter of beef demand, is image. So how that beef eating experience was produced. And so when we look at our target focus today are the most engaged millennials. So the millennial generation, if we just look at the USA, they're about 80 to 90 million of the 300 million here in this country. And their preference for beef is shifting in a very positive way in that they're willing to pay more than previous generations for that great beef eating experience and the beef eating experience we think they crave. So that's an opportunity, we think, to look at what is it that's driving consumer demand within the millennial generation, because, and when we look at other generations of the past, usually by about the age of 18, a consumer has their preference set for ground beef in their diet for the next couple of decades. When we look at whole muscle cuts like a ribeye steak, that decision is usually rooted in their minds and their hearts about by the age of 38. So we've got an opportunity with the millennial that's about 14 to 34 years of age today to solidify beef's position in their diet in the next 5 years. And we think that alone will pay dividends for the next couple of decades.
Tell us a little bit about the nutritional value of beef, especially when you're talking to the millennial generation.
Well, one of the unique things we've been able to do, a checkoff-funded project called BOLD, Beef in an Optimal Lean Diet, that really looks at what does 3 ounces of beef in a serving give a consumer in terms of all of the vitamins that they would need in their diet, just as an example. And so what we're seeing is the opportunity for nutrition to come into play. It's changing a paradigm from 2 decades ago that beef causes heart disease to today's paradigm is beef is really a part of a heart-healthy diet. And that 8 to 10 year checkoff-funded research area of nutrition is what is really paving the way for dietitians to look at beef in a very different way as the #1 source of protein in a consumer's diet. So it's really exciting stuff.
You talked about how the beef is produced and how important that is to this generation and really all of the people that consume beef and all of our consumers. Animal welfare has always been a topic that is so important, near and dear to our producers' hearts. Can you talk and discuss a little bit about the importance of animal welfare to the industry, to the beef industry as a whole?
Well, beef producers are the ultimate environmentalists, and they're the ultimate animal husbandrists. And when you look at the programs that we've had in place, starting with the Beef Quality Assurance Program, there's a commitment and there's a value in beef producers' minds and in their hearts about how they produce that great beef eating experience. So we're trying to use BQA as the foundation for everything and telling the story of how beef is really produced, because when we look at the influencers that are driving the discussions about animal welfare, about sustainability, we've profiled a little over 5,000 global influencers. And so we're really focused on the relationships with those 5,000 global influencers, and when we get them out into beef operations with farmers and ranchers across this country, it is amazing, Adam, to see the confidence they have in not only what they're eating, but how that beef eating experience was produced. A simple tactic that's yielding some super positive results.
That's amazing. One of the things you touched on was sustainability. McDonald's has come out and said we're going to use sustainable, verifiable, sustainable beef by 2016. And so that's had an impact on the industry. Tell me a little bit about what that impact is, and then what we're doing about talking about the word sustainable. There seems to be some confusion maybe over that. So what is sustainability?
Well, sustainability is a huge topic here of discussion this week in Nashville. It started this morning with the Cattlemen's College, where we had Bob Langert, the Vice President of Corporate Relations and Sustainability for McDonald's, on our program. And in my discussions with Bob and their team, actually also with Don Thompson, who is the CEO of McDonald's, here about 10 days ago in Chicago at their offices, what they told us was something I felt was very revealing, that they don't have all of the answers. But what they want to do is collaborate with NCBA, with beef producers across this country, to better define what sustainability should mean. And we think it comes back to a simple definition: how you demonstrate continuous improvement over time. That's simple. And they were very, very enamored with how simple we were trying to make a very complex topic. And so one of the things we've done to bring the simplicity out with this topic is we've just wrapped up a 3-year life cycle assessment. It's the largest of its kind, it's the most unique of its kind, in really measuring the footprint of beef, not only from an environmental point of view, but also from an economical point of view and from a social point of view. So, for example, how does the beef footprint impact rural communities, economically, environmentally, and socially? And so that is a set of research data that we're bringing forward in 2014, and it will enable us to have what we think we've earned, and that is a leadership seat at the table where beef sustainability is being discussed. And all the way back to some of my opening thoughts is how we connect the beef supply chain. So we're really excited about how we engage with organizations like McDonald's, like Walmart, like other NGOs, all across the beef supply chain to really understand what should beef sustainability mean. And we think we've got a very simple approach.
There's one more topic that we sort of want to discuss, which is the future of the industry. Where do you see the industry going? You've mapped out several things that are happening today and going to have a long-term impact, but where are we going? What's next?
Well, our entire focus in 2014 is building the 5-year roadmap for 2015 out to 2020. And we're focusing that roadmap around a Vision 2020. That roadmap will be all about building trust to enable growth. Building trust starting with these influencers that I referenced earlier, not only in what beef eating experience they're consuming as their source of protein, but how that beef eating experience was produced. If we do that right, we think that there is a tremendous growth opportunity for this industry, not just domestically, but globally. And we've even done the math to look at what might that mean for the number of beef cows we really need in this country. We're at an all-time low today of about 29 million beef cows, and we think we could add 4 to 5 million beef cows back into this U.S. infrastructure if we do those things right. So Vision 2020 will be all about building trust to enable growth.
Well, I have two last questions for you. If you could tell the consumer, all the consumers in the United States and really the world that eat beef, what would you tell them about our industry?
Our industry is committed to providing the safest, most wholesome, highest quality beef eating experience you're going to find anywhere in the world, period. We want to demonstrate our commitment to continuous improvement with how that beef eating experience is produced, because 96% of Americans crave beef. We want to make 96% of global consumers crave beef. That's our goal.
Well, one last question, and it is talking about craving beef. What's your favorite cut of beef or your favorite beef recipe?
My favorite beef eating experience is a filet on top of a spinach salad. That's the best beef eating experience anyone could have, especially with the busy schedule that I have and always being on the go.
Forrest Roberts, thank you so much for stopping by Cattle Chat Corner.
Thank you, Adam. Appreciate you having me.